It's like their kids can finally take center stage of their lives and of their future, and they no longer feel defeated and overpowered by this disorder, and their parents can finally breathe.
Welcome to the Soaring Child Podcast, where parents of children with ADHD learn tips and tricks to help their child soar at home, at school, and in life. We feature interviews with experts, medical professionals, and parents just like you who are learning how to reduce ADHD symptoms using food and other natural strategies. Because children with ADHD deserve to soar just like every other child. I'm your host, Dana Kay. Hello parents, this is Dana Kay here with another edition of the Soaring Child Podcast. This conversation is going to blow your mind, or as us Aussies like to say, it's a cracker. Yes, I know some of you listening may need to Google that one. Before I was able to reduce my son's symptoms naturally, he was on 3 medication and the doctor wanted to add in a 4th. And my son had actually started to have these facial tics as a result of the strong medication. Now, as a parent, it was so scary because I had no idea why or what to do about it. That's why this week I am so excited to be exploring ADHD, tics, and nutrigenomics. My guest is a doctor of advanced holistic nutrition, traditional naturopathic doctor, and is a board certified doctor of natural medicine. She helps parents get access to the tools and education they need so they can start reducing their child's tic disorder symptoms naturally. She is an international best-selling author and the founder of Regenerating Health. After going from stay-at-home mum to child's holistic health expert, Piper has been able to help many families just like hers to gain control of their child's tic disorder using food, functional lab testing, and natural approaches. Okay, now it is time to welcome Piper Gibson to the Soaring Child. Hi, Piper. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, I am so excited to be here with you today.
I am so excited to have you here as well. We have a long history, and I always love to chat with you about and get all geeky. For me, when we have this chat, it's all about, we believe the same thing. We focus on the same thing in helping kiddos, and that's, my passion and your passion. And so it's always wonderful to talk to people that share the same passion.
Absolutely.
So we are going to dive straight in. Before we actually sort of get all technical, I just wanted to ask, what inspired you to get into this career?
Yeah, so my story is very, very similar to your story. 10 years ago, my son was diagnosed with a transient neurological tic, and it was at the time felt like very overnight, and we were terrified. We were scared. We started Googling, and we really felt like we were written off by our doctors and our neurologists. They were like, just ignore it. He'll grow out of it. And I'm like, are you kidding? Can you see what this child is doing?
What was he doing on his face?
He was
on his body,
jerking his neck and clapping his hands and clearing his throat, all like repeatedly, just what would be considered a tic disorder. And it was just kind of overnight. One day it was fine, and the next day it was on. So like a light switch had been flipped. And after going to like 10 different doctors, 8 different prescriptions, one point we were on 6 different prescriptions at one time. We went for a second opinion, and that doctor was like, oh my gosh, get off. You cannot be on all these prescriptions. And so I went back to school. I relearned everything I thought I knew about health and wellness so that I could help my son. And so now, that's really my focus and my passion is helping families who are in the same shoes that I've worn.
Definitely. Oh, it's such an interesting story. How old was your son when that all started?
He was 6 when it happened.
Wow. And was it in just the home environment, or was it also in the school environment?
It was everywhere. And at school, it was a little bit, I think, exacerbated because he was stressed out and he was scared. He didn't know what was happening with his body. We didn't know what was happening with his body. The conventional approach is, well, just ignore it. Yeah. Don't talk to them about it because it'll make it worse. And you have all these kids that are scared, like they can't control their bodies and they feel like they have to do these actions or they're going to explode. And it's it's really, really stressful. So yeah, it was just overnight. And yeah, now he's 16.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so he's 16. He just no longer struggles with all of these symptoms. And we had everything else like focus issues, and he had cyclical vomiting and dysgraphia and sensory processing and all this laundry list. And so now he's 16 and he's thriving, and we have now are at the light at the end of the tunnel.
That's amazing. That's, such a wonderful story to hear. I know that you've sort of said that there were these other associated disorders, and, I very much focus on ADHD. And so I just want to sort of dive into what do you think the connection between tics and ADHD is?
I really think so much of it, with no matter what the comorbidity is inflammation. Mm-hmm. And I really think that we have all of these kids who have dysregulated immune systems for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And it's really spurring on this immune system response, which is lots of inflammation. And when we talk about inflammation, it's not just, I've got inflammation in my pinky finger. It's really systemic. It impacts our whole body. And so, for a lot of kids, you have specialized immune cells in your brain called microglial cells. Those get activated when your immune system's turned on. So for a lot of kids, maybe it's tics, or for a lot of kids, maybe it's, a hard time focusing, the attention deficit. It's really, to me, there's this bigger, broader connection of inflammation and where that inflammatory response is coming from.
Definitely. So let's just take a step back, and probably, for not everyone knows what tics are. And I think that that's probably a good place to start. So can you explain just a little bit about, in layman's terms, what are tics?
Yeah. So tics are, if you look in the dictionary, and I don't think the dictionary is quite right in their definition, but it's really a movement disorder. And most symptoms happen facially. So people are scrunching their faces, and a lot of kids are jerking their necks or clapping their hands or rapid eye blinking. So a tic is a movement disorder. It is a disorder where your child cannot control certain movements, and they can be motor or they can be vocal. Maybe they're saying a word over and over, clearing their throat, or making, barking dog noises. That is really that vocal piece. So you have the vocal and the motor, and some kids have them combined, and they have both going on at one time.
And being a kid, and, could just imagine being in the playground and not being able to control your voice or your face. And, a lot of kids are mean. And when you've got something like that, I just can't imagine what that feels like for that child and the family also.
Absolutely. Because I've been there, because I work with these parents, it's really gut wrenching, and it's scary because it's not really explained to you well by anybody. They're not really telling you, like, what's at the root, what is really happening with your child. And so it is very much a scary, overwhelming, and frustrating process.
It is a very scary a process. When you went to the doctors, what did they say to you?
The first meeting was, I think it's just a tic, just ignore it, but we'll send you to the neurologist. And then we went to the neurologist, and he just observed my son. He sat there and looked at him, and he goes, I think he just needs a good spanking. Mm-hmm. And for me, I was all, what did you just say? This child cannot control his movements. We are not going to spank him. And so
I can't believe a neurologist actually said that to you.
Oh, he said it. He no longer has a medical license, not because of me, but because of other baloney he did. But wow. But I was not the only one he specifically said that to. Like, I can talk to other parents who are like, oh yeah, he told me the same thing. And so then we went down the rabbit hole of, well, let's go to the allergist. Let's go to the dermatologist. Let's try acupuncture. Let's try chiropractors. We tried all the things.
Yeah, I know that feeling of just trying absolutely everything and, not finding that solution and spending so much money to get there. I think I could put both my boys through college with the amount of money that I spent on random things I think was going to work. So you talked a little bit about inflammation. What can be some underlying, drivers to that inflammation?
So for me, I look at several factors when it comes to inflammation. Gut health is a big piece of that. If you have an unhappy gut that's inflamed from underlying infections or microbial imbalance, we can have a lot of inflammation there. It can be spurred by food sensitivities. Kids are eating things that just aren't right for their body. They're spurring some inflammation. And even genetically, we can see that some kids, especially my son, was predisposed to chronic aggressive inflammation. So if we can look at genes and how that impacts them, that's another key piece. So gut, foods, genetics, even things like environmental toxins, or I've seen a lot of kids lately who have mold toxicity. So really looking at not only what's going on inside the body, but what are those impacts from outside the body? Your environment plays a big role in how your body's going to function.
Oh, definitely. You speak to my heart when you talk about gut health. I mean, from what I see with kids in the level of gut dysfunction is just immense, and it's systemic, and it's coming through most of the people that we see. You touched on genes, on genetics. Can we sort of dive a little bit deeper into that? So, what sort of influences our genes, and how can we change that?
Yeah, my favorite analogy for genetics is, if you drove on a bridge every day to and from work, and you knew that bridge had hazards on it, so old tires and trash, and there was a lot of hazards on that bridge, and you're like, I got to drive on this bridge, but that bridge also had a crack in it, you would do everything in your power with your city to be like, look, you need to fix this bridge. And so you can remove the hazards and you can reinforce the crack. And it's very much the same when we're looking at genomics, is what needs to be removed from your environment, from your lifestyle, in order to support your genes? But what do we need to also reinforce? Are you predisposed to maybe not having enough of a certain nutrient? Or, for me, when I look at genes, I look at 35 different genes with my clients. And when we're looking at genes, we're looking at 7 of them are on and off switches for inflammation. So if you have a lot of, we're going to call them broken on switches for inflammation, it's like putting lighter fluid on a fire. You go whoosh. So if you're predisposed to this aggressive inflammation based on your genes, and you're continuing to eat gluten or dairy, it's like the lighter fluid effect, just aggressive. But then if you've broken off switches, you have a really hard time turning that off. So you spur it on and then you can't turn it off. So, that's just part of it. We can look at sensitivity to sugar. We can look at sensitivity to gluten. We can look at sensitivity to histamines. So it's really an in-depth way to look at, well, what do we need to remove and what do we need to reinforce to give you optimal health? And honestly, it is a roadmap that these children can use for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And, I'm a big believer of finding out what's going on with our genes. A lot of people like, well, it's our genes, it's our destiny. What are your thoughts on that?
So genetics loads the gun. Yes, you may have some predisposition, but environment pulls the trigger. And I think one of the best examples is you can look at certain genes for celiac disease, for gluten sensitivity. And if you have those gene variants, you are predisposed to a higher risk of having gluten sensitivity or celiac disease. Does it mean you're going to get it? Not necessarily, but it can increase your risk something like up to 80% if you're consuming gluten. So we have to look at how our environment also impacts our genes. So a lot of people would say to me, well, we'll just change our environment. And I'm like, yes, you could absolutely do that. But when you know your genetics, the number one thing is that my clients are so much more compliant because they can see it and say, okay, these are the things that I have to do. We're testing, we're not guessing. We don't have to shoot in the dark.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny, not really funny, but, I have a lot of families that come to me and the parents have just been diagnosed with celiac. And if only that parent had known that they were predisposed to getting celiac, they could have taken some steps previous in life and probably not ended up with celiac. And celiac, when you've got it, it is not fun. Even the slightest little bit of cross-contamination can make you feel so sick. So I absolutely love everything that you're saying. Now, is there a terminology? Like, what is this called? Like, what do families, when they're like, oh, I want to look at my genes and I want to optimize my environment, what's that called?
So it's called nutrigenomics, and we're looking at really the impact of nutrition and genetics. And a lot of families will say, well, can I just do 23andMe? Yeah, yeah, you could. You could, but it's really a novelty test, and it doesn't connect the dots for what's happening in your genetics, like in certain chains in your genes, but it's also not connecting with that health history. And it's not giving you all of that information. You get 12,000 pages of raw data that you don't know what to do with. So really using the right test from the start and getting the right answers from somebody who knows how to analyze that data is going to be worth any extra investment that you are going to make.
Totally. And so, look, I can tell you back in the day, I did 23andMe, I did it for my son, and I came out of it saying, well, you've got a greater chance of, and this is probably a little bit too much information, but when I eat asparagus, my pee will smell. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do with that? So I, totally agree on the 23andMe. So what test do you use? What's that? What's your go-to?
Yeah, so I use a test by a company called GX Sciences. I'm formerly their corporate clinical educator. So I have experience teaching doctors, providers, practitioners how to utilize and analyze this data in their practices. And it is my go-to. It was honestly the test that completely changed my son's life. And when we saw such huge changes for him, we had done all of the other legwork, like the food and the environment. But once we made the changes based on his genes, I was like, teach me your ways. Show me how to do all of these amazing things. So
that's amazing. And do you do that to start, or if you like? There are so many things families can do. There are so many tests out there. And, if someone's got a limited budget and really, can't afford to do all of them, what's your, is it your go-to, or is there, what's your first test if you may, like if someone's got a limited budget?
Yeah. So my first test would be food sensitivity testing, just to really refine the diet. I think that the reason I say that is most of my clients will tell me like that was the best way that they were able to stick to those diet changes. But I would say my top three are food sensitivities, definitely looking at stool pathogens, and then using genetics, because once I have at least those three, it's a really powerful combination to be able to connect the dots.
Amazing. And so, what does it look like? What's the outcome when you get those results back? What does that look like for a family?
It's like their kids can finally take center stage of their lives and of their future, and they no longer feel defeated and overpowered by this disorder. Their parents can finally breathe and feel like, I can reclaim my life, which is extremely exciting. But, I frequently get texts and emails from my clients that are like, here's my daughter in a play center stage. I have a client, I've worked with her solidly for almost a year, probably 4 months in. She called me, just FaceTimed me. She's 14, just extremely elated that she had gone to school and for the first time in years was able to hold her pencil and write. I mean, just the simple things, being able to go to the movies, she got into her dream high school. She had to try out. She was like, I'm so grateful. I never would have been able to do this if it wasn't for you. So, I can say, yes, my clients aren't struggling with symptoms, but really it's the big things that they're able to accomplish in their lives. And when you think about how they're little, they're young, and how much of their future they have ahead of them, is how long are we going to let them struggle with that? Or are we going to wait till they're 25 or 30? Like it's really incredible to see all the amazing things that my clients are able to accomplish.
Yeah, it is amazing. You're changing the trajectory of this person's life. So I just want to take a step back from that.
Yeah.
You get the test results back. What sort of things are families having to change when you get the results, or what are they having to take, or what food changes or lifestyle changes, or what supplements, those sort of things?
It's very individualized because one, there's just not one size fits all diet. So we're going to individualize that approach for sure. But a lot of times maybe we're making diet changes. We're going to take out gluten and dairy. I have some fabulous coaches on my team who are going to refine that and teach my clients how to do that. They will, I would say 99.9% of the time, we're going to do some really intense gut work. And it really depends on, is it candida? Is it microbiome imbalance? What is it? So we're going to work on that, but definitely everything that I recommend is holistic and natural. Working on diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation, putting it all together into this really unique individual plan that my clients can then go step by step.
Awesome. And typically how long would that plan run for a family?
Usually 3 to 6 months, depending on the commitment that they've come to me with. Are we going to do a smaller package, or are we just going to do like the whole shebang, the VIP event where you are going to get all of the testing, all of the data, and we're going to really hammer it out?
Yeah, no, I understand. And so one of the biggest things families ask me, when we're sort of getting towards the back end of a protocol is, do they have to continue eating this way all the way through their childhood and into adulthood, gluten, dairy free? What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah. I think that a huge part of the process for my clients is this teaches their children how to listen to their bodies. Mm-hmm. And so I know that, they may go out and cheat and have a piece of pizza, but then that child is not going to feel well. They're not going to be able to focus. And then that is their sign that like, oh, I shouldn't do that. So I do explain that to parents. Like, look, this process has taught your child to listen to their body. Should they eat that way? Yes. If they want to continue to feel good and amazing, yes, because maybe we've looked at their genes and maybe they're predisposed to aggressive inflammation, gluten and dairy, very inflammatory. Should we add those things back in? I'm going to go with probably no.
No, I agree. I don't think anyone should be eating gluten.
I totally agree.
And I think that it's probably a real driver for most disorders and illnesses in today's society. But that's a topic for a whole other day.
It is. And that's a great topic because I completely agree with you on that. And I think that it's not talked about enough. It's people don't really understand the ins and outs, and they don't understand the why. Like, why? How is it so impactful on your gut and your brain in general?
Definitely. And that's one of the things that we teach. The first lesson that we teach with our families is why. Because I find that when you know the why, you're more likely to follow through and you're more likely to have chances of success. So the why is everything. Now, Piper, this has been a really, really insightful conversation. If you had one sort of parting piece of advice for families just starting out on this journey, what would you say?
I would say don't waste time, money, and years Googling everything and shooting in the dark. Like, honestly, find somebody and work with somebody who can lay out a plan for you and help you get your child back on track sooner than later, because you want your child to feel good now, not 6 months from now, not 6 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Look, that's a fantastic piece of advice. And how can families get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is regenerating.health, so not .com, but www.regenerating.health. I'm on Instagram at Regenerating Health. I'm on Facebook at Regenerating Health. And I do have a private Facebook group called Tic Disorder Secrets, A Natural Approach. So you can search that as well. And yeah, reach out. I would love to connect with you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Piper. As always, I loved and enjoyed this conversation so much, and definitely can't wait to have you back on the podcast to maybe discuss gluten or something else.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It was great being here.
Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Soaring Child Podcast today. To learn more about how to help your child with ADHD soar using natural strategies, visit our website at ADHDthriveinstitute.com and follow us on social media at ADHD Thrive Institute.